Good morning to the world. Welcome to the Athena 40 podcast series, Bouncing Back. I'm Elizabeth Philippuli, founder of Athena 40, an international platform promoting women's advancement. And as of today, March 30th, 2020, Athena 40 is starting this new series. In this podcast, we are interviewing thought leaders, entrepreneurs, influencers, and decision makers from all over the world. We discuss the toll of the coronavirus crisis on people, industries, countries, our psychologists, and how we can craft a new normal when everything around us is in chaos. We will be looking for ideas and ways to bounce back individually and collectively from the worst global crisis in our times. And our first guest is Palma Michelle, a mindful leadership advisor. Palma supports organizations and senior leaders in becoming conscious, impact-driven leaders and serve greater good. Her first book, The Authority Guide to Mindful Leadership, was published in 2017. And Palma has this exceptional ability to empower others to leave their comfort zone and live their lives with authenticity, compassion, inner peace, gratitude, and love for life. If anything, these days, we have come to appreciate the importance of compassion, and we have surely lost our peace of mind. And so what we're going to discuss today is how we can find inner peace. Palma, welcome to Athena 40. I'm delighted to have you as our first guest.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and also for the wonderful introduction. I'm really happy to be here and look very much forward to our conversation.
Palma, no one is alone in feeling anxiety these days due to the coronavirus. And all of us, we have our challenges and our day-to-day stress. But this pandemic has us all facing more stress and more uncertainty than usual. And it also has many of us asking, how do we keep from spiraling into full-blown panic?
I can relate to what you say, because as a meditation teacher, I'm generally always really peaceful. But even at the beginning, like 3 weeks ago, I noticed that my mind came up with a bit more worst-case thinking than it normally does. And I could feel also, and I can feel it sometimes as well, as my body is even picking up from the general anxiety. So it must be really challenging, what I see also with my clients, for anyone who doesn't already practice these tools. But anxiety is really an interesting one. I mean, you're pointing out that obviously right now we have much more uncertainty than we normally have. But I also feel the kind of what we're experiencing now is also just like an accelerated lens to the uncertainty that we're always facing, because we're never really that certain. We just think we are. And right now there's no more pretending, because everything is really up in the air and everyone is confronted with that uncertainty. But I feel when we talk about anxiety, there's a variety of different things going on. This could be experiences, physical sensations, but it could also be, like what you pointed out, kind of just us being completely caught up in our projections about what's going to happen. And our mind has this negativity bias that it always tends to go to the worst case. And then that's almost kind of like a magnet, if we pay attention to those thoughts. And there's kind of, I guess, there's some interesting research from neuroscience that kind of talks about the different parts of our brain. And we all have an executive brain. It's also called a prefrontal cortex. And some of you might already have heard of that. And the executive brain is kind of responsible for long-term thinking, for strategic thinking, for a positive outlook, for controlling our impulses. We need it when we want to focus. So it's kind of a really good 21st century brain, and a part of our brain that would enable us to, I guess, tackle this uncertainty with more calm. But unfortunately, we also have a different part of our brains, which could also be called a lizard brain. And some of you might have had the fortune to, I guess, observe lizards in real life. I had that 2 years ago in the Maldives. And what I found is these lizards, they kind of were doing many things that weren't really smart. They were very cute, but not that smart. So for example, when they saw me approaching with my bicycle, they would run as quickly as they could. But unfortunately, they wouldn't run away from my bicycle. They would run into my bicycle, almost as if they were on a suicide commando. The second thing they were doing was they would pretend they were the grass or the tree, kind of change their colors. And then the third thing was they were sort of kind of preparing to fight me by making little push-ups with their whole body. And before you think I now lost it, why I'm sort of speaking about these little lizards, I'm just basically speaking about these three behaviors: the fight, the flight, and the freeze. And as we also do have a lizard brain, whenever there is uncertainty or there's a lot of change or we feel under pressure, and I think right now all these three are coming together, our lizard brain does hijack our executive brain. It's kind of almost like having two tentacles that it puts on the executive brain. And when the lizard brain is on, the executive brain is off. And what tends to happen in those moments on a physical level is really our body is put into a survival mode. So our heartbeat starts going faster. Our breath becomes more shallow. Our muscles are tensing up as literally our body prepares for a fight. At the same time, our immunity is lowered as well. Our reproductive organs shut down. Our digestive organs shut down. And these can be felt in a really big way or just more in a subtle way. But at the same time, what happens is we tend to get into a tunnel vision on the mental level, and we can no longer look left and right, but we're kind of glued to just thinking in this smaller scenario where there are all these thoughts which have an emotional content. And there's the interesting neuroscience fact, like they put people into fMRI scanners and they made a lot of different experiments, and what they found out is what sets off our reptilian brain or our lizard brain is not necessarily what happens in the outside world, but how we think about it. So
it's true, but these days, Palma, I think that we're more or less in a freeze mode, because we are all living in a reality that feels unreal. Like everyone else, I feel the hugeness of this. I wake up in the morning and I wonder, will my dear ones be okay?
yes.
How will the most vulnerable people in our world cope? Will I be okay?
Yes.
So I feel as if I'm not having any choice between fighting or flying away from all this, or my only choice is to freeze and just accept my fate, which of course by nature it's not compatible with me, because by nature I'm a fighter.
Yes.
But this is so large, it's so big, that I don't know whether it gives me, if you like, the space, the margin to fight. And I know that many people pretty much feel similarly. I don't know how you're experiencing it, and what are your thoughts here?
I hear you loud and clearly. So what you were describing is one of these three reptilian brain scenarios. Neither the fight, nor the flight, nor the freeze will equip us to deal with this crisis accordingly. I relate to the feelings a little bit. Let's say 3 weeks ago, I had exactly that. I was worrying quite a lot about my dad, even though his current health is really okay. And kind of all of a sudden, I guess the feelings of potential loss, of grief, for my loved ones, but also for the world, for many people, that are not just suffering through the coronavirus, but will be undoubtedly the poorest people in the world be impacted quite heavily afterwards. But what I noticed is the more I'm thinking about this, the worse I was feeling, the more the intensity of the dread, the fear was building up, building up, building up, building up. And I wasn't, I guess, really capable of thinking clearly about what can be the one next step that I can take. Or actually, even while I was caught up in my mind, maybe worrying about my dad, it did prevent me from actually connecting with him. So what I have done in this situation is realizing, and there's a wonderful, wonderful man, it's a Scottish man who has long passed away. His name was Sydney Banks, who kind of described the way we experience reality. And he used 3 principles, and one is the principle of thought. And through thought, we literally create our reality. So what I found is if I'm spending a lot of time thinking about all the worst things that can happen, I'm actually just living in the future. I'm not living right now. And I used all the energy I was spending in thinking about, oh my God, something will happen to my dad or my other family members, actually in connecting with them and cherishing the love I have for them right now. And while it might feel we don't have a choice, the more we start to analyze the situation, the more awful we will feel. And I would be curious if that's what people are experiencing, because from my experience, the more we analyze, like, why am I feeling this way, or this feeling shouldn't be there, or this situation is overwhelming, it builds up more and more and more and more and more. Our body will feel more and more and more nervous. We will feel more and more and more fear, but it's all experienced in our mind.
It's true. I agree with you. On the other hand, I'm thinking that a lot of us are experiencing fear around our own mortality. And in the West,
Yes.
at least, that's something we don't talk about much. Our grandparents had faced hardship and war, but for us and our generation, we have been pretty much spoon-fed. This live or die reality has hit us hard. Do you follow a daily routine in order to stay calm and centered?
Yes, and I have for many years. That's why I guess I was able to very quickly go back to balance.
Share it with us then.
So my daily routine starts. I mean, the first thing you mentioned, mortality, and I'm acutely aware of mortality, having been together with my grandfather when he passed away, and I'm also volunteering in a hospice, and I've done this for 4 years, and I do this every week. So every morning when I wake up and I open my eyes, and it might sound a little cheesy, I actually raise my arms into the air and I say, yes, thank you for another day. I really appreciate, the first thing I do is I appreciate being alive. And I find that very, very liberating, and it kind of sets a tone for the rest of the day, kind of a sense of urgency for living life full-heartedly. The second thing I do when I'm still maybe a little bit sleepy in these beginning moments when I wake up, I think about a few things that I appreciate, just generally in life or from the day ahead. And I don't mean necessarily being grateful about, because grateful can also feel like I should be grateful because I have it better than other people. And that doesn't feel so good, but really thinking about what is nice right now in my life. And it could be as little as the blanket that's touching my body, but it could also be bigger things like an amazing client meeting ahead in the day, or kind of a big workshop that I'm leading, or the love of my family, or just whatever you feel called to. And then I have daily meditation routine, and don't get discouraged by that. I sit an hour every morning, but my clients, they don't sit an hour, they sit maybe 10 minutes. And in these 10 minutes, while we cannot really control what's going outside, but we can really learn how to control or how to choose how we want to be, how do we want to meet the day. And so I encourage everyone to really just ask yourselves, okay, how do I want to be today? What quality of being do I want to bring in? And take a moment in the morning to connect with that quality and imagine your day ahead. How would your meetings be going? How would concentrated working at your desk look like if you, for example, had this quality of focus? How would your interactions with other people be like? And that can also serve as a powerful reminder throughout the day. And the gratitude sounds so simplistic, but it's really, really important, as I mentioned before, that our mind does have this negativity bias, and we get used to everything that's nice very, very quickly, and then we're just saying next, 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 which is something maybe that you have also already experienced. So by simply bringing to mind what you appreciate, it kind of counterbalances that negativity bias and points your mind to more positive things as well.
So for people who don't have experience meditating, like myself, and of course we're looking for ways to deal with the self-isolation. For example, I'm quarantined at the moment. I'm on the 9th day of my quarantine. And I'm taking things calmly. I have adjusted to this interesting reality. As a person, I'm someone who thinks positively of life and the world, and I can see that there are some positive elements which are surfacing out of this reality, like togetherness, like solidarity. Yes. But when it comes to meditations, I don't know how to do it. So could you suggest one or two simple meditation practices that could be useful for our current situation?
Yes, I think the number one very, very easy practice, and we could even do it together, is a breathing exercise. Because when the mind is spinning, the body gets tense and our breathing gets shallow. So the easiest would be a breathing exercise to calm down the body and calm down your lizard mind, basically, to create a little bit more space in your minds and bodies. And one thing to be said about meditation is also, particularly for any beginners, is people have seen all these pictures of blissed out meditators, and they feel meditation is like something like a super relaxing kind of practice, or it's something where you shouldn't be experiencing any thoughts. And then when you sit down, most likely in the beginning, you might actually notice, oh my God, my body is really tense, or I actually do have a lot of thoughts. And then people think like, oh, wow, I have so many thoughts. I'm actually only making my to-do lists while I'm meditating. So this is a waste of time. I better not do it. But I'd say this is entirely normal, because the whole idea initially is that you retrain your mind to find more focus and find more stillness beyond the thoughts. But that's where we need to train the attention muscle first, basically, before that calmness in meditation can happen. So the easiest to start is kind of literally to sit down. You could do this with your eyes closed or with your eyes open. And to take a deep inhale through your nose. And it's really important that you inhale through the nose, but without forcing it, just taking a deep inhale. And then taking a slow exhale through your mouth, ideally through pursed lips, as if you were to blow through a straw. Inhale deeply and exhale slowly. Let's do this for 3 more breaths. Inhale deeply. And exhale slowly. And if you notice that your attention wanders off and away from your breath, that's already a moment of presence. And then just bring the attention back to the breath. 1 more. Inhale deeply. And exhale slowly.
Well, it already feels calmer on my end.
Yeah.
And I feel, the value of it and how it's giving me an inner peace already, even those few couple of moments, couple of minutes that we did it.
And it's amazing because it's not really giving you an inner peace, but it's revealing the peace that's always at the background. Because your nature is inherently peaceful. And it's kind of at every moment there are 2 experiences going on. There is kind of the noise in the mind or in the body. And then at the background, there's kind of almost like a container of peace in which that noise appears. But as the noise, like difficult thoughts or difficult emotion, they're really like Velcro. They attract us so much. That's how we forget that there's also that peace at the same time. So with a breathing exercise like this, the moment the thoughts quiet down a little bit, and they quiet down because they no longer have your focus, because your focus is on the breath. And then just your background piece can get more into the foreground. And the more you meditate, and that's my experience in life, or the more you become interested in the silence rather than kind of the noisier parts of your existence, the louder this piece will get and will be always in your foreground experience.
I have a question here for you.
Of course.
And I think that, of course, it is very important to meditate and to make sure that we retain or protect our calmness. But then feelings of anxiety and stress and uncertainty, they are felt especially strongly by children. Children of all ages. So every child deals with such emotions in different ways. And of course, any child that has been faced with school closures, cancelled events, or separation from friends and grandparents, they are going to need to feel more loved and supported, and now more than ever. So okay about ourselves, because it is very important. It reminds me of when we are on an airplane, when we need to make sure that we put our own oxygen masks first before we help others. So I can understand the value and the importance of that. But how do we support our children?
I think at first, I find it interesting that you point out children. If you take little children, for example, their emotions are off the charts, but at the same time they tend to have a really quick outburst, like really intense, and then they go back to the base case calm. Now the older children get, the less that's obviously the case. And I love the example that you're using, because that's an example that I'm always using. Like if you want to support your loved ones, but you yourself feel kind of paralyzed and frozen, there's really very little that you can give. And that's why like a short breathing exercise can kind of help you just feel a little bit calmer than in order to support your children. And to really connect with them from a place of love. But if you're kind of really, I guess, nervous and anxious about the situation, and possibly, let's face it, it can be tricky to have the kids at home. But if you also want to work from home, possibly annoyed with the situation, then it's really, really difficult to support them. They're different, like, for example, children and teenagers in many ways, and I've worked actually also with quite young children. They respond to something like meditation a lot easier than adults, because in many ways they have less history of contracted thinking that keeps them from reconnecting with their inner peace. But another thing that can be really helpful, again, is with children in normal times or also right now to kind of count the blessings. As I mentioned, the appreciation exercise, kind of in the evening before tucking them into bed, really think about all the things that are nice right now, despite all of despite this kind of intense uncertainty and new reality. I feel generally children are better or quicker at adapting at new realities than parents very often are.
I couldn't agree more. And I see that for some people, this lack of social connectedness feels as impactful as not eating, because suddenly we have, introduced, or rather new meanings and new terms have been imposed on our lives, like social distancing and self-isolation. And so losing our everyday social connections, it comes with psychological costs, or not being able to physically get in touch with another person's body. That is having a tremendous impact on us, on our psychology.
I agree. I mean, we're social beings, and loneliness is already something that in normal times literally kills. And kind of daily social connection is very, very important. Thankfully, I'd say these days that social connection does not necessarily have to be in person, face to face. It can also be via Zoom calls. It can be via WhatsApp calls. So I don't know about you, Elizabeth, but for example, with my family, we do these WhatsApp calls with friends. Before I never called them, I was texting them, but now I see all of them face to face via WhatsApp calls or FaceTime calls. And in a weird way, for example, because there's I use all these tools, like online connection, I feel in a weird way almost more connected than before. I feel though that the other element in this isolation is, and not having the human contact, is that most of us in daily life, we kind of avoid our own experience. Mostly we busy ourselves so much that we never really stop to really notice what's going on inside of ourselves. And very often meeting friends, running from meeting to meeting, going to our exercise class, then meeting someone else for a dinner party, going to an exciting talk, boom, 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 back to back. We never stop to feel.
Yes, and the feel to maintain and to protect this sense of community and of supporting each other. And this is very important also. So, for example, what we have done as Athena 40, we have introduced those online yoga sessions every Thursday morning, London time. And we have invited all our Athena 40 members from different parts of the world to share this session. And it's a mix of meditation and yoga, exercising, keeping active, but for all of us. And it was fantastic because the first session last Thursday, we had women from South Africa, Turkey, Jordan, the UK, Greece. So they joined from all over the world, and you could feel that eagerness to stay connected and support each other. And we're also planning with one of our other Athena 40 members, Grazia Giuliani, a digital dinner this Friday evening. So I think it's very important to stay connected. Do you think that media exacerbates our worry? Has, for example, their reporting of the outbreak been creating panic and anxiety?
I mean, 100%. That's even I noticed, and I'm probably more peaceful than most people, but I felt, particularly in the beginning, the more I was reading the news, it was literally, there was only then Corona in my mind. And when I started to only engage with the news kind of once or twice, or kind of reading some of the articles my family sent, but really in a more dosaged way, I also found immediately my well-being was going up. So in many ways, kind of, I mean, the news is reporting about it 24/7. That's their job, and that's totally fine. But it's not necessarily that they're reporting so many new things. Yes, I mean, they report how many new cases in each country, but it's not necessarily something that supports us in kind of taking better care of ourselves or changing our predicament right now. But the more we read about it, the more we're consumed by the virus, and the less we focus either on our own well-being or actually on the things that do bring us joy, be it the time if we're living with our family members, with the family, or the time connecting with friends, or the time maybe painting at home, or the time kind of just allowing your mind to wander, to come up maybe with new ways of doing what you're doing. So I would recommend really to engage with the news, but in a limited dosaged way. And generally also the same with social media. Yes, go to a yoga class on social media, like a live class, a meditation, a concert, have live dinners with a community like this. And I love this idea. I think this is beautiful, a digital dinner party and the yoga. But scrolling incessantly through social media already in good times is proven to lead to people feel worse afterwards.
Can you hear us? I think
Yes.
I've lost your voice for a bit. Okay, excellent. Palma, would you like to share with us a quote or a poem or text which you find inspiring and motivational, or perhaps it has some special meaning for you?
Yes, and there are basically two quotes. One I really find very pertinent for the time right now comes from Sydney Banks. And it goes like this: if the only thing people learned was not to be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. This goes back to really like kind of very often we're more afraid of our own fear than we're afraid of what's really happening. And by tuning towards our, and most of the time we're kind of always like in the future. The mind is always projecting in the future, but we're missing right here, right now. And that's the only place where peace, where inspiration, where genius can be found.
Palma, I would like to thank you for this conversation today. Palma Michel with us, Mindful Leadership Advisor. When things fall apart, it's a really challenging time, but it is also an opportunity for us to wake up our hearts in many new ways. I would like to thank you for listening to the Athena 40 podcast, Bouncing Back. Stay tuned. More episodes coming up, conversations with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, influencers, and decision makers from all over the world in this effort to find our new normal. Stay safe, stay well, and wherever you are, remember to look towards the sky.